and building a fair and rational global climate governance system for win-win results. It will be translated into English, French, German, Spanish, Arabic, and Japanese, and will be published by the People's Press and Foreign Languages Press. To help you have a better and more accurate understanding of the white paper, today we have the honor to have Vice Minister Ye Min of Ecology and Environment and the leader of the Department of Climate Response of the Ministry of Ecology and Environment. He will take your questions on climate change. Minister Ye, please. Thank you, moderator. Ladies and gentlemen, friends from the media, good afternoon. Welcome to the press conference on the release of the white paper responding to climate change policies and actions of China. Let me take this opportunity to thank all friends from the media for the long-term support and care for China's response to climate change. Climate change is a serious challenge facing all mankind. It requires all countries in the world to work together and help each other out to cope with it together. Addressing climate change has a bearing on the sustainable development of the Chinese nation and the future and destiny of all mankind. As an active promoter and firm practitioner of climate action, China has always attached great importance to climate change and regards climate change as an important part of the advancement of ecological civilization and as an important way to promote the transformation of development mode and achieve sustainable development. Over the years, we have stayed committed to the guidance of Xi Jinping thought on ecological civilization and firmly implemented the national strategy to actively respond to climate change and achieved remarkable results. On the basis of comprehensively reviewing the work of addressing climate change, we organized the compilation of the white paper, Responding to Climate Change Policies and Actions. This is also the second time since 2011 that China has issued a white paper on China's response to climate change from the national level. The white paper includes China's new concept of addressing climate change, the implementation of a national strategy to actively address climate change, the historic changes in China's response to climate change, and the establishment of a fair, rational, and win-win global climate governance system. As was mentioned by the moderator, it elaborates on China's vision and policy actions in addressing climate change since the 18th CPC National Congress, especially during the 13th five-year plan period, showcases the progress and effects as well as China's outstanding contributions to global climate governance. It reflects China's propositions, wisdom, and plans to deal with climate change systematically. Since the 18th CPC National Congress, China has continued to deepen its efforts to address climate change, achieving a significant reduction in carbon emission intensity, continuous optimization of the energy and industrial structure, continuous improvement of low-carbon development systems and mechanisms, solid progress in the construction of a national carbon market, region-specific low-carbon development models, stronger adaptation ability, and higher awareness for green and low-carbon development. At the same time, the Chinese government actively and constructively participates in global climate governance. We adhere to the principles of multilateralism and common but differentiated responsibilities, attach great importance to international cooperation in addressing climate change, actively participate in international negotiations on climate change, deepen South-South cooperation on climate change, promote the conclusion and speed up implementation of the Paris Agreement, shape a new pattern of global climate governance with China vision and China practice, and gradually become an important participant, contributor, and leader in the development of global ecological civilization. In 2020, President Xi Jinping made a major announcement of carbon peaking and carbon neutrality, demonstrating China's firm determination to take the path of green and low-carbon development and join hands with the international community to tackle climate change. This is a major strategic decision made by the CPC Central Committee with Comrade Xi Jinping at the core, coordinating the overall domestic and international situations and after careful consideration. In the next step, we will resolutely implement relevant decisions and arrangements and continue to promote new progress in addressing climate change. The UNFCCC COP26 will be held in Glasgow, the UK. COP26 will complete the negotiation on the remaining issues of the implementation rules of the Paris Agreement, and global climate governance will enter a new era as it continues to embark on a new journey of building a modern socialist country in an all-round way, entering a critical period of comprehensive green transformation of economic and social development. At such a period, the release of this white paper is crucial to enhance domestic and international understanding of China's climate action and share Chinese wisdom and solutions. Responding to climate change is a common cause of mankind. China will continue to implement the national strategy to actively respond to climate change, incorporate carbon peaking and carbon neutrality into the overall layout of ecological civilization development, make every effort to tackle climate change under the new situation, and will work with the international community to promote the comprehensive, balanced, and effective implementation of the Paris Agreement and jointly build a fair, reasonable, cooperative, and win-win global climate governance system and start a new journey of global response to climate change. These are the opening remarks, and now my colleague, Director General Sun, and I would be happy to take your questions. Well, thank you, Mr. Ye. Now the floor is open for questions. Please identify yourselves before asking the question.
谢谢，我是中央广播电视总台央视记者。
Thank you.
我的问题是呢，
With
今天发
CCTV,
布的
my
这个应对
question
气候变化
is,
白皮书，
for the white
它
paper
跟以往
that is
相
to
比
be
有什
released
么不同？
today,
另外一个问题就是
how is it
我国
different
目前
from
的
the
应对气候变化，
previous
您认
white
为
paper?
最大的机遇是
And
什
what
么？
are
另
the
外面临的挑
greatest
战有什么？
opportunities
谢
and
谢。
challenges for China's response to climate change?
好，谢谢你的提问。
Thank you for your question.
关于白皮书，
On the white
刚才
paper,
也跟大家通报了，2011年国新办
in
就发布了
2011,
中国
the
应对气候变化的
SCIO
政策
issued the white paper of
2011
China's
白皮书
policies and actions on climate change
此后
2011.
2012年至2020
Between
年，
2012 and 2020, we have
中国应对气候
released
变化的
the
政策
annual
与行动
report of
年度
China's
报告，
policies and actions for
持续
addressing
向社会
climate
各界
change every year
通报我国
to
应对
introduce
气候变化的
China's
进展
progress
和
and
成效。
achievements in addressing climate change.
那么党的18大以来，
Since the 18th
以习近
Party
平同志为核
Congress,
心
the
的党中
CPC
央
Central Committee
高
with
度重
Comrade
视
Xi
气候
Jinping
变
at
化
its
工作，
core, has
实
attached
施
great
积极应对
importance
气候变化
to
国家
addressing
战略，
climate change
应对
and
气候变化
implemented
工作
an active
从
national
认识、
policy to
理念
address
到
climate
实
change.
践，
There has
都
been
发生了历
historical,
史性、转折
transitional,
性、
and
全
profound
体性的变
changes
化，
in the
取
approaches
得
and
了举世
practice
瞩目的
of
成就。
China's efforts to fight climate
此次
change.
发布的白皮书
And remarkable
系
achievements
统
have
阐
been
述了
made.
习近平总书
This
记
white paper gave
关于
a
我国
full
应对气候变
picture
化的
of
新理念、
General
新思想、
Secretary Xi
新战略。
Jinping's
全
new
面概述
approaches and strategies
党的18大
on
以来，
China's efforts
特别
against
是
climate
13五期
change,
间我国所采
elaborated
取的
on
应对气候
China's
变化
policy
政策措
measures
施
and
和
achievements
成
on
效，
addressing climate change
系统梳理
since the 18th Party
应对气候变
Congress,
化的中国路
particularly
径
during the
与方
13th
案，
five-year plan period,
充分
and
体
gave a
现我国
systematic
为
review
应对气
of
候变
China's
化
approaches
做
and
出的
plan for
重大贡
addressing
献
climate change.
和付
It
出的
speaks
巨大努
volume
力，
about China's important contribution
展示了
to
我
and
国
great
主
efforts
动承
for
担
addressing climate change,
应对气候
and
变化
shows
国际
China's
责任，
commitment to
推
its
动共建人类
international
共同体的责任与
responsibility of
担当。
addressing climate change and to building
同
a
时呢，
community with a
这次
shared
发布的
future
白
for
皮书
mankind.
重申了
This white
中
paper
国对
also
全球气候
reiterates
治理的立场
China's
主张，
position on the
对国
global
际社会发出
climate
倡议
governance,
和呼吁，
calling on the
推动世
international
界共
community
建
to
公平合
build
理、
a fair,
合作共赢的
reasonable,
全球
and
治
win-win
理体系。
global governance system.
关于机遇和挑战，
As for the opportunities and challenges,
绿色低碳发展
Green and low-carbon development represents the trend of the world, as well as new economic growth drivers and development opportunities. The CPC Central Committee has adopted a long-term approach and taken targeted measures. It has seized strategic opportunities and formulated mid- and long-term targets and visions for addressing climate change. It has seen addressing climate change as an important tool for promoting high-quality development and high-level protection of the environment. It shows China's commitment to its international responsibility on addressing climate change and to building a community with a shared future for mankind. In recent years, China has taken a series of effective policy measures, adjusted the industrial structure, improved the energy mix, increased energy efficiency, and forest carbon storage, and strengthened adaptation capacity, and made remarkable achievements. By the end of 2020, the carbon dioxide emission per unit of GDP of China was reduced by 48.4% compared with 2005, outperforming the committed target of 40 to 45%. The top-level design has been improved, market mechanisms being advanced, and public awareness been raised, and sustained progress has been made in addressing climate change. Having said that, China is also faced with difficulties and challenges in addressing climate change. The world is facing unprecedented changes unseen in a century. Unilateralism and protectionism are on the rise, and China is facing a more challenging international situation in addressing climate change. China plans to use about 30 years to achieve carbon neutrality from carbon peak, much shorter than major developed countries. Thus, China is faced with more challenging task of energy and industrial transition. China is the world's largest developing country. It is faced with multiple challenges, including economic development, improving people's lives, controlling pollution, and upholding energy security, on top of our unbalanced and inadequate development. The understanding, policy tools, approaches and measures, and basic capacity of China in addressing climate change still have some weak links. But under the strong leadership of the CPC Central Committee, we have the confidence and capability to achieve the task of carbon neutrality and carbon peak. Moving forward, we will be based on a new development stage, follow through on a new development philosophy, foster a new development paradigm, adopt a systemic approach, and strike balance between development and emission reduction, the overall picture in different parts, and short-term and mid- and long-term, include carbon peak and neutrality into the building of an ecological civilization. We will be committed to a green and high-quality path of development, prioritizing ecological conservation, committed to implementing an active national strategy of addressing climate change to achieve the goal of carbon peak and neutrality and contribute to addressing climate change. Thank you. Next question, please.
右边第二排。
感谢主持人。总台央广记者提问，我的问题是：那么中方对于 COP26 解决巴黎协定第6条实施细则的历史遗留问题是否持一个乐观的态度，将做出具体的努力？谢谢。
Solving the Article 6 of Paris Agreement at COP26 and what efforts will be made?
谢谢。谢谢叶部长。
Well, thank you,
感谢
Minister Ye, and thank you for your question.
COP26 啊，这个首要任务呢
The primary task of COP26 is
巴黎协定
to
实施细则的
complete
谈判，
the negotiation of the Rulebook of
关于
Paris
市场
Agreement,
机制
particularly
这部分的一些遗留问题。
on the
这
remaining
是各方
issues of Article 6 concerning the market
巴黎协定
system.
的基础
This is
和
the
前提。
precondition for
也
parties
是呢
to
维护
fully and effectively
国际社
implementing
会
the
特别
Paris
是
Agreement
工商界
and an
对
important
多边
sign
机制信任
for
的
ensure
重要标志。
the international community's trust in
期待
multilateral
各
system,
方
particularly the business
相向而
community.
行
We hope that parties will work toward the same goal. Developed countries need to act in a constructive and flexible manner, follow the principle of common but differentiated responsibilities, stick to the nature of nationally determined, and avoid any retrogressive position or even renegotiation on issues that already have principled consensus. There are some key issues. First, the market system needs to provide founding support for adaptation of developing countries. Adaptation is high on the agenda of developing countries, and the fund provided by developed countries is far from being enough. China supports the provision of stable and predictable adaptation funds for developing countries. Particularly, we hope that developed countries can be active and constructive, and parties can work together to find a reasonable solution. And second, on the relationship between the emission reduction goals of market system and the NDC. Parties shall not be asked to adjust their NDC targets because of the transfer of emission targets out of their NDCs. But China also understands that some parties might be concerned about this. So maybe considering factors such as the time frame of the NDC, there can be a certain time frame, and parties can be asked to clarify what their NDCs cover before participating in market system cooperation. And third, on the transition of the pre-2020 emission reduction targets. We hope that we can ensure the confidence and active participation of private sector in market activities under the Paris Agreement, so parties shall be allowed to use their pre-2020 CER to complete their NDC and participate in market transactions. And we are willing to discuss some compromised approaches. China will work with the UK, the COP26 president, follow the rules of openness, inclusiveness, transparency, parties-driven, and consensus building. Step up communication and coordination so that COP26 can complete the negotiations of the Rulebook. Thank you.
好，请大家继续提问。
Next question, please.
中间第二排这位男士。
谢谢主持人，人民日报记者提问。
With People's
叶部长
Daily.
您好，我想问一下，就是咱们国家现在就是应
Minister
对气候
Ye,
变化
I
工
want
作
to
的
ask
总体进
about
展如何？
the
有哪些
progress
成效
made
对下一步工作有哪些考虑呢
in
谢谢。
China's efforts to fight climate change, and what more will be done.
谢谢你的提问。我国呢高度重视气候变化工作，
Thank you for the
将
question.
应对气候变
China
化
attaches great
作为
importance to
生
addressing
态文
climate
建设
change.
的重要抓手。
In regards,
近
climate
年来，
response
我国
is
实
an
施积极应
important
对气候
part
变化的国家战略
for，ecological
采取调
civilization.
整产
In
业
recent
结构、
years,
优化
China
能
has
源结构、
implemented a national
节约
strategy on climate
能源、
change
提高能
to
效、建立市场机制、增加
adjust
生态会
industrial
一系列的政
structure,
策措施，
optimize energy
各项工作
structure, save energy, and
取得了
improve
积极的进展。
efficiency. Positive
体现在
progress has
降
been
解
made
方面。
in various areas.
一是
First,
温室气体排放得到了有效的
greenhouse
控制。
gas emissions have been
2020
effectively
年，
put under control. In
中国碳排放
2020,
强度比
China's
2015
carbon
年
emission
降低
intensity
了
reduced by
18.8%，
18.8%
比2005
compared to
年降低了
2015 and
48.4%，
48.4% lower
超
than
过了将国际消费
2005,
承诺的
exceeding
40%
the
到
40 to
45%
45% goal promised
那
to
么
the
基本扭
international
转了
community,
二氧化碳
and basically
排放
reversing the
快速增
rapid
长的
growth
这样
of
一个局面。
CO2 emissions.
二是能源结构优化
Second,
取得了
the
成效。
optimization of the energy
2020
structure
年
has
我国
achieved
非化石
results.
能源
In
占能
2020,
源消
China's
费
non-fossil
比重
fuel energy
15.9%
accounted for 15.9%
比
of energy
2005
consumption,
年提升了8.5%。
an increase of 8.5 percentage points from 2005. Reliance on coal consumption has dropped significantly, and energy structure optimization has achieved significant results. Third, the continuous improvement of the national carbon market. On July 16, 2021, the National Carbon Emissions Trading Market officially launched and started trading. The first compliance cycle of the market included 2,162 key emission units in the power generation industry, covering more than 4.5 billion tons of carbon emissions each year, making it the world's largest carbon market covering greenhouse gas emissions. In addition, China's low-carbon pilot demonstration work has continued to advance. The ability to adapt to climate change has been continuously improved, and the low-carbon awareness of the general public has also been continuously improved. While doing a good job of domestic response to climate change, we are also actively participating in global climate governance. China has played a historic role in promoting the conclusion and entry into force of the Paris Agreement and the formulation of the implementation guidelines. We actively carry out South-South cooperation in addressing climate change to help other developing countries, especially the least developing countries, African countries, and small island countries, to increase the capacity to address climate change. In 2020, President Xi Jinping made a major announcement of carbon peaking and carbon neutrality. The CPC Central Committee made important arrangements for carbon peaking and carbon neutrality. Opinions of the CPC Central Committee and the State Council on the complete, accurate, and comprehensive implementation of the new development concept and achieving carbon peaking and carbon neutrality have just been released recently, and the 1+N policy framework is being formed at a faster pace. In the next step, we will continue to implement the decisions and deployments of the CPC Central Committee and State Council. First, we will actively implement climate goals in the 14th Five-Year Plan and break down the 18% binding target into regions with stronger supervision. Second is to promote the implementation of the carbon peaking action and promote the implementation of the 1+N policy system and advance the development of green low-carbon circular development. Third is to step up preparation and promulgation of the implementation plan for pollution reduction and carbon reduction synergy. Fourth, continue to improve the national carbon market and work with relevant departments to roll out the provisional regulation on carbon trading as quickly as possible and gradually expand the market coverage to more high-emission industries based on the sound operation of the market in the power generation industry. Fifth is to strengthen the construction of relevant systems and mechanisms to control carbon intensity and carbon emission and implement long-term mechanisms for the statistics and the management of greenhouse gas statistics. Sixth is to coordinate efforts to address climate change and ecological environmental protection. The seventh is to improve public awareness for low carbon and green development. Eighth is to formulate the National Climate Strategy 2035 and strengthen monitoring and assessment. And ninth is to continue to take an active part in international negotiations on climate and continue to expand South-South cooperation on climate change. Thank you. Next question.
谢谢。封面新闻记者提问。习总书记曾经说
With the cover news, President Xi Jinping used to say that addressing climate change is something we do on our own, not something we are asked to do. So my question is, what is the significance of climate change to China's economic and social development? President Xi stressed at multiple occasions that responding to climate change is not something we are asked to do, but something we do on our own initiative. It is what China's development requires. It is also what we need to do to build a community with a shared future for mankind. China's economy is Shifting toward a period of high-quality development, addressing climate change is an important tool for us to advance high-quality development. By advancing green, low-carbon circular development and building a low-carbon energy structure and advocate a low-carbon lifestyle, and adjust the structures of energy, transport, and other industries, these efforts will continue to inject new impetus to economic development. Climate response is also an important part of environmental protection and ecological protection, and it forms strong synergy with environmental protection. It can improve the environment from the source and raise the efficiency of environmental protection and lower the cost of environmental protection. Climate response is also China's contribution to the building of a community with a shared future for mankind. China upholds multilateralism and principles including common but differentiated responsibility. China actively shapes and leads global climate governance and works for the comprehensive, balanced, and effective implementation of the Paris Agreement. China advocates for the interests of developing countries and works to shape the global climate governance system towards a fairer, more rational, and more win-win direction, and work for the building of a community with a shared future for mankind. To do a good job in climate change would also go a long way towards implementing the new development paradigm and advancing the new path of high-quality development. This is a challenge, but also, more importantly, an opportunity. For China, the world's biggest developing country, its development still remains unbalanced and inadequate, and we face a series of heavy tasks of addressing environmental pollution and other issues. That means we need to be realistic when we are working to achieve carbon peaking and carbon neutrality, and base our efforts on China's national conditions and take coordinated efforts to make arrangements on a science-based and steady manner. At the same time, we are clearly aware that we need to take all sorts of measures, tap the potential of new forms of businesses and new industries, and that is an important driving force for high-quality development, and this will create new drivers of green and low-carbon growth and contribute to economic transformation. Thank you.
好，下一个问题。
Next
这边
question.
这位外国记者。
Thank you. Tom Cheshire, Sky News. China burns more coal than the rest of the world combined. It's still adding to that coal power, and in the document released yesterday, you said you'll only gradually reduce that, at the same time as you're asking other countries to drastically reduce their emissions. How long will that peak of coal use last, and why is apparently China prioritizing short-term economic growth over the future of the planet? And secondly, we've heard about the leadership of President Xi Jinping. Will he be attending COP26? And if not, why not? Thank you.
请翻译一下问题。
英国天空新闻频道记者：中国的煤炭消耗量是世界其他国家的总和还要多。中国依然在持续的发展煤电产业。在今天的白皮书当中提到了中国将逐渐削减煤炭的使用和消费。那么我的问题是，在与此同时，中国却在要求其他的国家减少煤炭的使用和减少碳排放。中国的煤炭使用什么时候能够达到峰值？中国是否愿意为了星球的未来牺牲一些短期的利益？第二个问题是，习近平主席是否会出席第26次缔约方大会？如果是或者不是的话，会是什么原因？谢谢。
谢谢。习近平主席是否参加 COP26大会啊。
Regarding whether President Xi Jinping will be attending COP26, the Foreign Ministry will be responsible for giving you an answer. On your question about coal consumption and coal development, this is something that people are watching very closely. And Director General Sun will be answering your question. Thank you, Minister, and thank you for the question.
关于这个，我想主要是关注这个近期的一些情况啊，也同时也提到。
My answer will be focusing on what has been happening recently, as well as the relations between short-term and long-term efforts. I will try to be concise in my answer.
能源呢是经济社会发展和我们这个群众生活
Energy is
基础的保障
a basic guarantee and precondition for economic and social development and people's lives.
文明进步的
It is also a driving force for the advancement of human civilization.
对未来来说的话呢，实现经济社会可持续发展的这个能源领域的清洁低碳发展是尤为紧迫的。
And also, there's an urgent need for us to realize clean and low carbon development. In recent years, China has been making enormous efforts to adjust energy structure and optimization of the energy structure. And we are shifting from the heavy reliance on coal, and our energy consumption is becoming more diverse. In 2020, China's coal consumption accounted for 56.8%, down from 72.4% in 2005. And non-fossil fuel accounted for 15.9%. And China's renewable energy is growing rapidly. China's non-fossil fuel power accounted for 98 million kilowatt, which is number one in the world for 6 years in a row. By 2030, non-fossil fuel will account for 25% of primary energy consumption, and we will be installing 1.2 billion kilowatts of wind power and solar power. President Xi further announced that we will support developing countries' low carbon energy development and will not build build coal power generation projects abroad. China will continue to control the consumption of coal and redouble efforts on developing renewable energies and build a new power system that relies on renewable energy. And China is also the world's biggest manufacturer of clean energy equipment. We will advance international cooperation on that and help developing countries to shift towards clean and low-carbon energy structure at a faster pace. China, as a developing country, faces multiple tasks of improving people's livelihood, growing the economy, and eradicating poverty. And we face many realistic challenges that cannot be addressed overnight. We need to be systematic and holistic and be prepared for all risks and ensure the security of energy supply chains and guarantee people's lives so as to respond to the risks that could arise in realizing green transformation. Thank you. Next question.
谢谢。凤凰卫视的记者，我们想请问中国打算采取什么措施来加强应对气候变化的履约和透明度的建设？谢谢。
Enhance its capacity of honoring commitment and increase transparency in addressing climate change.
主要想请问一下，中国准备采取什么措施来加强
China will
应对气候
do
变
to
化
strengthen
履约
its
和透明度建设？
capacity to honor its commitment and increase transparency in responding to climate change. I'll give the floor to Director General Sun.
感谢记者朋友提问。
Thank you for your question.
关于这个话题呢，还是要从公约说起。
Let me start with the convention.
全球共同应对气候变化应该建立在全
Global efforts against climate change must be based on unity and cooperation of all countries.
这个关于各方要提交国家润湿气体清单，要加强透明度建设的这些规定。
The convention have asked countries to submit its list of emission reductions and other materials. This is very important for the implementation of the convention. And the Paris Agreement has laid out more specific requirements so that countries will take more effective and transparent measures against climate change. On transparency, the Convention also grants developing countries a certain degree of flexibility and asks developed countries to provide funding and capacity-building support. China, as the world's largest developing country, has seen its climate action transparency drawn a lot of attention. So far, China has submitted 3 reports of its national information and 2 updated reports. That means the list for 5 years. These lists are credible and science-based. They are recognized by the international community. The counting system of greenhouse gas is the foundation for formulating these lists. Through years of efforts, we have put in place a basic accounting system covering different mechanisms. As for businesses, we have released about over 20 methods and guidelines for the statistical work. At the leading office of carbon peak and carbon neutrality, China has recently set up a working group on the statistics. China will further improve such system, strengthen our capacity, and ensure that this counting system can meet the new requirements of the Paris Agreement, and see that China will make even fresher progress in the governance capacity in responding to climate change.
谢谢深圳卫视记者提问，然后也是一个关于
Shenzhen
COP26
TV.
的问题。
It's also
我
about
想请问一下，中方对
COP26.
此次大会总体上有何期待呢？谢谢。
What does China expect from this COP26?
COP26呢是巴黎协定
Thank you.
进入实施阶段
COP26
之后召开的首次对方大会
is the first conference of parties after the Paris Agreement. China advocates that this conference should first send a message of upholding multilateralism and multilateral rules.
各方要落实
All parties need to implement the UNFCCC
确立的共同但有区别的责
and
任等原
the
则
Paris Agreement and principles including common but differentiated responsibilities, as well as the system of nationally determined contributions. On the basis of respecting
为应对
countries'
全球气候变化做
conditions,
出贡献。
all countries need to contribute to global response to climate change. China
在本次大会就
stands ready to work with all parties
取得进展。
to make progress in the following major areas.
一是
First,
完成巴黎协定实施细则的
completing
谈判。
the negotiations of the
巴黎
Paris
协定
Rulebook.
已达成近6年，
It has been 6 years since the Paris Agreement was reached, but we are yet to finish the negotiations on the implementation guidelines,
那么国际社会
including Article 6, the international community have full high hopes for the guidelines to be completed. The conference should work actively to conclude the negotiations on Article 6, which is a foundation and prerequisite for the full and effective implementation of the agreement, as well as an important indicator for the global community's trust in the agreement. Second, developing countries have long been concerned about financial support, technological support, and capacity building support. There should be progress at this conference. Previously, developing countries technology and financial issues have long felt disappointed about developing countries' efforts. And people have misgivings about developed countries trying to shift blame in emission reduction over to developing countries. In the course of implementation of Paris Agreement, these issues concern political trust as well as the efforts of developing countries to address climate change. The conference should make arrangements and fully advance ambitions on support, mitigation, and adaptation. Third, we need to highlight implementation. We need to advocate all parties to implement the goals and turn the goals into specific policies and measures, and avoid making the proposal of goals into empty slogans. For example, developed countries must fill in the gap of $100 billion every year. This is a major issue concerning the trust between developed and developing countries. Various developed countries, without honoring their commitments, continue to raise their climate goals. For that, parties need to realize that goals that do not focus on real actions are empty slogans. Only by honoring Paris Agreement's goals and targets can we address the climate crisis and climate challenges. If there's no more question, this will be the end of the press conference. Thank you, spokespersons, and thank you all for coming.
Thank you.